Clay with your gutter mouth and me in an opium stupor. I'm sure this podcast is going to be a conversation for the ages.
Well, I've been drunk for a while, so what the fuck is that to you?
Well, you're in for a treat because this dope is making me quite randy, just like Alma Garrett. So,
well, you better have a paying dwarf beneath you, Wes. My notes for this show have now just completely turned into writing down quotes.
That's what a lot of mine are too. But it's a difficult. There's not much. I mean, I write down the sort of the scenes, and I write down like the interactions of the characters, and then I write down some quotes too. But this is Plague that we are about to get into. So we're going to take a quick break, play the music, and then we're going to come back and break it down.
You're listening to a podcast that is a lie agreed upon. Join Wes and Clay as they discuss HBO's Deadwood and tell you something pretty.
All right, Plague is the 6th episode. We're halfway through the first season of Deadwood. It's called Plague. It's directed by Davis Guggenheim, written by Malcolm McRary. On the trail of the coward Jack McCall, Seth Bullock is ambushed by an Indian. Bullock kills the warrior. In Deadwood, a John falls ill at the Gem. Doc Cochran tells Swearengen about the outbreak, but the news is kept quiet. Al confronts Trixie and makes it clear that she is to dope the widow or else. Trixie tells Alma to fake intoxication whenever Farnham shows up. Calamity Jane returns to Deadwood and explains that she's been caring for Cramed. Tension grows between Tolliver and Joni. Outta finds the injured Bullock. Bullock tells Otta about Hickok's death and presses him to carry the corpse of the Indian to its proper resting place. Deadwood's town leaders meet at the Gem and decide to put together money to pay for the riders to get the smallpox vaccine. A plague tent is erected for the sick, staffed by Cochran, Reverend Smith, and Calamity Jane. So yeah, we're halfway through the first season at this point. The biblical plagues are upon us, but not the ones that are carried by rats, as they talk about in this episode. Not the Sodom and Gomorrah that you want to be talking about. Not the rat plague, not the bubonic plague, but smallpox is now officially broken out in Deadwood. So what do you think about this one?
I like this one. This one also had a bit of... I don't want to call it wheel spinning to me, but it didn't have quite as much zip as some of the other ones did.
Yep. Similar to our last week's episode, the trial episode.
Yeah. I kind of feel like the Bullock plot line felt really sort of jammed in there. He literally gets knocked out for the whole episode.
Yeah. Timing's a little weird. It just like the this is the only episode I think that hasn't taken place the day after the previous episode to this point. A little bit of time has passed, and it's unclear how long Bullock is just laying on the ground after he has this fight with the Indian. I assume it's a little bit of time, but maybe not days. But I don't know.
Yeah, that's really bad for you, I think.
To just be out there in the cold.
Yeah, having been knocked out.
Yeah.
Or, well, I guess he sort of passed out. But.
Lost a lot of blood. He's quite bloody from his back.
Not in a good way. I liked it. I mean, I think these characters are all super engaging, and so it's kind of, it's always fun to watch them do whatever they're doing, but it did feel a little bit, a bit of a dip for me on this one.
Yep. Plague we're halfway through the first season at this point. I think that listener Kyle was talking about how these episodes are defined at this point in terms of episodic storytelling and whether or not, like, I think that they actually tell concise stories within each of their episodes. I don't know what you think about it. I think on this rewatch, at least, the storylines kind of blur together. But what the episodes of Deadwood do is that they do focus on a distinct idea in each of them, and the plots kind of revolve around that, and they build off of each other. It's not like they go in totally different directions, but I think that the start and end points of the episodes are not quite as clear. Maybe this one is because they erect the plague tent and stuff like that, but I would say that like the episode itself doesn't tell a completely, totally self-contained pure little story that has like a initiating action and then the like climbing action and then climax or whatever and then down or whatever.
Right.
It's more you do see a little bit of like a beginning and an end in it, but it's mostly about how the episode is exploring what the episode wants to be about. And I think that this one is mostly focused around Al's centering in terms of what he is representative for in the town, whether or not he is this sort of like crime boss figure who is trying to make everything out for himself, or how he's gradually moving into more of a communal figure. And I think that everything else around him kind of contrasts with that in this episode. So you see him squarely in the middle of these decisions, and he has actions that go on both sides of the coin for himself. And he's not even really actively thinking about it in those terms, but it's just the place that he finds himself at this point in the story.
Yeah. He continues to be a very a character with quite a dichotomy to him, because while he is a craven, murderous, greedy shithead, he also recognizes that somebody needs to take control of things in this town. And so, I mean, if you compare him to Cy Tolliver, Tolliver's first instinct when the plague shows up is to try and hide it, whereas when Al finds out about it, he walks right over to Tolliver, talks to him in the open, gets answers from him about what's happening, and then puts a group together to figure out how to deal with it for the town. So like he understands that in order for him to continue to do what he does, the town must not, everybody can't die of smallpox.
Yeah.
And so he positions himself as the person who is going to guide the town, because clearly nobody else is.
Why do you hear on that back seat?
He's had a case break out at his place.
Let's go to the cage, or shall the three of us leap up on tables and shout questions to one another across the room?
What about the vaccine?
The boy never made Nebraska. He took sick.
Where is he now?
Back here.
How the fuck long has that been?
You don't want to pursue that, Tony.
You sat on news, no one went after the medicine. I'm asking the duration.
And I'm saying questions in that tone and pointing your finger at me will get you told to fuck yourself.
Show me the room where the boy is.
Yeah, Swearengen finds himself, he is, like, you bring up Cy. I think Cy is clearly positioned to be like the worst case Swearengen personality. He's the he's the bad version of Swearengen in a way. And what's interesting is like whether or not if Powers Booth had stayed in that role, would Swearengen have just kind of stuck to that darkness side of things? When Swearengen, as you're saying, goes over and confronts Cy about like, tell us where the rider went and like where the outbreak of smallpox is coming from, and Tolliver has the great line, asking questions in that tone and pointing your finger at me will get you told to fuck yourself, which is pretty much Cy's whole point of view. Like Cy has continued to be portrayed as not a very nice person in this show. He kind of has a coming to terms with Swearengen over the course of this one, just because Al doesn't sell him out to everybody else by saying that he had been covering up the outbreak for a little bit of time. So he has that line about like, I'm glad you didn't put the stink on me with everybody else. But in all of his other conversations and interactions, he's really turning out to be kind of a shitheel with his interaction with Joni. And then he threatens Eddie Sawyer, his like card sharp, and is generally unpleasant to everybody else. But he's like, he's they show here in the town hall scene that he's bought land unbeknownst to everybody else. So like he's bought lots in the town for the building towards the future. And Al gives him a little bit of like the balls on this guy to do that. But the difference between them is just that, I think it's interesting because Swearengen isn't even really having a conflict within himself about what's going on, but he is gradually, he's more aware of the fact that the town isn't going to survive unless something larger comes into play outside of just his own criminality running the town and things like that. Like his mob boss control is not enough to stop the bigger threats to the camp at this point, and the biggest threat so far is this plague that's come in, smallpox.
Yeah, Al is weirdly more compassionate than Tolliver is.
Yeah.
Even though he's equally as shitty, but Tolliver is a lot colder than Al is. Al in his own way has this weird compassion about him. I probably best articulated in the contrasting scenes of Tolliver with Joni, who's his number 2, in the way that he treats her, and Al with the blonde prostitute.
Trixie.
The redhead. No, not Trixie. The redhead who thinks she has smallpox.
Oh, I would even compare it with because both are because Al threatens Trixie in that scene too when he's trying to figure out if she's giving the dope to the widow.
That's true. Yeah,
and I think that the relationship between those two is more similar than I know what you're saying when he's talking to the redheaded prostitute. The redheaded prostitute scene to me is a very good example because it perfectly encapsulates like where he finds himself, which is that he's cruel to the whore, but he also is kind of kind to her at the same time. It's this really delicate balancing act of like, he's like, well, I can't kick the shit out. Like I can't, every other guy in here might have gotten smallpox from drinking from the glass the same way that you were making out with that John, but I can't kick the shit out of them and tell them to get back to work. But then he just, she has the heartbreaking thing about like her mother died when they were coming out of smallpox and her father had to sell the kids into prostitution, basically.
Right, yeah.
And his response is like, he's clearly affected by it. He tries to pass it off and then just gives her he says like, you just have to give hand jobs for a day or two and we'll see where it goes from there, which is his own nice way of being gentle on her, I suppose.
You better have a paying dwarf underneath you.
Am I dying?
Turn off the fucking water and tell me what you did. I know you didn't fuck him.
No.
Suck his prick?
He didn't want to show it to me till he had a hard on.
That's what you call a mistake of youth. You muck it up with him?
A little.
French like or normal?
Normal.
So any hooplehead who drank from the same glass this guy did it have as much right to sit there weeping as you, except I can't kick his ass and send him out to work.
My mom died of it when we was coming out, and that's when Daddy gave us up.
Well, that sad story makes me believe maybe you was exposed and ain't a candidate for it no more. Stick to hand jobs a day or two if you like.
Yeah, it's like when Mr. Scrooge allows one more piece of coal.
Mm-hmm.
It's from the bottom of his heart. That's the best he's willing to do.
It is. But Tolliver, on the other hand, starts off kind of, you think that he's talking to Joni in that scene where she's in her bedroom as if he is becoming softer, and then ends it with the harshest line of the interaction, which is like, this is the way I'd like to touch you. Don't make me do another way.
Yeah.
So they have a like really different personality difference there, where Al is much more sympathetic than Tolliver is. Tolliver is the closest thing I think the show has to a sociopath so far. Like he's unrelatable to everybody else.
I would say that the difference with the scene with Al and Trixie, though, is that when Al has his mind set on a thing, it's sort of like it doesn't matter who's in front of him, he's going to run through them. And like that's one of those scenes where he has a very specific outcome in mind, that it's just the people who are working for him who are going to fuck it up.
Yeah. Do you think he doubts? Do you think he believes Trixie or he doubts her? Because I see that scene as development, which is that Al does not believe what Trixie is telling him.
Yeah.
But he's becoming more gentle, and the storyline clearly between Trixie and Al is that Trixie is breaking away from Al over the course of these episodes. And he's not doing the Cy Tolliver thing of like trying to hold her back in that way, so there's like there's an emotional difference there where Al is kinder to Trixie at this point, where in the first episode, because I don't believe that Al believes her, and if he was living up to the way there was in the first episode, he'd probably just kick the shit out of her in this one.
Yeah.
And she she's nervously like fidgeting with something the entire scene. The camera closes in, so she's nervous about what's going on. But and unless you disagree that Al doesn't realize what it is, that's my take on why that scene goes the way it is that because Al is changing in a way that Tolliver is not changing.
Yeah, I would also say, though, that he's playing it similar to the way he plays with Farnham when he finds Farnham is in the second episode or third episode when he finds out that Farnham is
the burn it all down scene. You got to
running info over onto the to Cy Tolliver's place where he's given the two sides of it where he's telling Farnham to keep his eyes and ears open, but he's also telling somebody else to watch Farnham.
Yeah. Although
I think it's a similar thing because he says that he tells Farnham to basically check up on what Trixie's saying. But yeah, I think he's being a little lax with her in a way that Farnham, maybe he wouldn't with somebody else.
Yeah. I would agree because Farnham, the reason Al doesn't go farther into like violence with Farnham is that Farnham convinces him of something, which is that like you can't just burn everything down because what else are you going to have at that point?
Right.
Trixie doesn't really give him anything that causes him to change his mind, I don't think, in that scene.
True.
It's just he's kind of questioning her. He's raising his eyebrow at her, like, why aren't you paying more attention? And then he just gives her explicit directions of like, you have to go behind the curtain and see what she does, and then we'll go from there. But Al himself isn't even really checking up on Alma. You know, it leads you to wonder what he even thinks about any. He sends EB all the time to go up and check on her, but
yeah, it's one of those things too where it's like at this specific point in time, how much does he really care about that? He's got a lot of other stuff he's dealing with.
That's true. It's a mild issue, a mild thorn in his side. You think he'd
which is funny too because as far as EB is concerned, this is like his number one priority. Yeah. And he has another little kind of talking to himself bit of monologue where he's cursing Al. And I'm sure to Al, it's just like one of 14 fires he's trying to contain.
Yeah.
At the same time.
I love that Farnham scene. Are you talking about the one where he's walking back from the gym through the thoroughfare and he's yelling at everybody who gets in his way? He's talking about how Al is a cue ball, and he's just a regular billiard ball that reacts to what the cue ball does. It's interesting and clever, but he's like...
No deceit too prolonged. No errand too demeaning. Get out of here. No rebuke too vile. Al Swearengen's a cue, and Farnham merely is billiard ball. Shit. Quagmire of piss and bullshit.
Sanderson is just so funny in that role. He's just like yelling at the horses that are walking in front of him and walks back. Yeah.
He's so good in this show. Like he's doing kind of the same thing that he always does, but he's doing it with a character that's really, really interesting. And I don't know if I've ever seen anything else aside from Blade Runner that gives him this much screen time and gives him this much to do. And he's really nailing it. I think EB and Jane, I think, are my two favorite characters in the show.
Yeah, Farnham's performance and characterization is funny. He also doesn't say a lot in the town hall scene, but he has two great scenes where Al says a joke and he laughs a little bit too hard at it.
Yes.
And then the other one is when they're giving out the money and he says like 200 and Al just goes, "Are you fucking kidding me, EB?" And 50.
Yeah.
It's a good performance. He's very funny. He plays off Swearengen well. He plays off everybody well, but he's just so pathetic, and the way he speaks is because he's probably second most like twistedly verbose in relation to Swearengen. Like Swearengen is clearly the character who talks the most and has the most sort of unclear speech, which is always a running joke that EB has to like say the thing that he said in different words to try to figure out what he's talking about. But Farnham himself has an interesting style of dialogue too, especially when he's speaking to himself in that way. Yeah,
and it's so fun because he's the only person that kind of has this weird external monologue.
Yeah.
And it's such a great character to choose because he like, you know, we throw around the word Shakespearean quite a bit, but he's almost like a parody of a Shakespearean character. He's like a guy who thinks that he's Iago, but he's not even close to being as smart as Iago is.
Yeah.
And so to give him this sort of disposition where he's going to walk out in a huff and start shit talking and scheming in a way that's just kind of ridiculous to listen to is a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah, he's kind of similar to Jane in that sense, in that no one takes him particularly seriously. Like no one listens to him as he's wandering around. And this one has another sequence of an extended sequence of, because Jane returns to the camp from being out with Andy Cramed in this one, and she's kind of yelling at everybody as she's walking through the town going to Doc Cochran's office, and no one pays any attention to what she's doing.
Yes,
the whole time.
Yeah. She continues to be great. Like she's just so self-conscious and overcorrects so hard in the other direction for no reason.
Yeah.
That it's just like, I don't know how a person actually functions in the world like that.
Yeah, she just has to find the right people. She has an extended scene with Cochran, which is built around that. Ain't you wise as a fucking owl?
I really like that scene because Jane is someone who up to this point hasn't really had a purpose. Like, you know, I don't mean like narratively, I mean like in her life.
Mm-hmm.
The closest thing she has to a purpose is Bill.
Yeah.
And then Bill gets taken away from her. And then that scene with the doctor, it really sort of like helps put her on a track to actually do something useful with her life. Yeah.
It kind of highlights that she had the girl for a little bit too, but she gave up the girl. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a really nice scene. And it's a masterclass on how to write sort of a sentimental scene with two characters who are anything but sentimental.
Yeah. They do they share a lot of good dialogue where he asks her like how her drinking is going, and then says, if you were a farmer, I'd ask how the farming was going.
Yeah.
They antagonize each other, but they are sort of kindred spirits at the same time. And Cochran enlists Jane because she can't get sick from smallpox, it seems, to help with the taking care of the sick, which is another, just building on that theme of the female characters are largely becoming the centers of care for everybody else. And, Joni's trying to, in this one, Joni starts to feel bad for Ellsworth, who's having this con run on him, and she's trying to get him to walk away from the craps table, which is what upsets Tolliver about her. Alma's trying to be taken care of by Trixie to get clean of the dope, which is a running thing throughout the episode. And then Jane eventually becomes the sort of Nurse Chapel character, if you will, of Deadwood, as she's going to start taking care of everybody who got sick with the smallpox.
I wish Nurse Chapel talked like Jane.
It'd be a little bit more interesting of a character, more memorable.
Captain,
you tricorder.
Captain, you expect me to go down to that planet with those fucking rock cocksuckers?
You can go fuck yours.
You keeping your sister, your daughter in the cocksucking emergency transporter?
She'd have some things to say about the ugly aliens in this one. She said she's called some guy like some ugly butt fucker like you or something. Say that to the Cardassians or something like that, I think would work.
If I had that mug on me, I believe I'd cut down getting told how butt fucking ugly I was by not staring at fucking strangers.
Yeah, and so I think it's just the show is further developing this idea that something is happening in the town. They're going to have to respond to it. I think the show excels in the small moments. Like there's the small runner of Al wants fruit for the meeting.
Yes.
For everyone to have. And
that's such a relatable thing too. Because like if you've ever gotten like a job from a parent, like an angry parent or like an angry boss, that's like an ill-defined job, and you're just like, I really want to do this right, but I really can't ask him or her any questions.
Right.
about the specifics, so I'm just going to have to try to nail this on my own.
Yeah, Johnny doesn't know how much fruit to buy, how many people are going to be at the meeting.
Yeah.
And then kind of comically, I don't think anyone eats the fruit by the end of the episode, so it was all for naught.
Yeah, I think just Al. I think Al's the only one eating.
Yeah, he takes a bite, I guess, and then Smith has his seizure. Yeah, I guess, and just for the context, at this point in time, canning was still kind of considered like a magical technology that they were having, so it would make sense that their peaches and pears would be canned and they would be considered a delicacy. But on the I just think it's nice because like on a thematic level, it shows how it's weird because it's like the sweetness of the fruit pairs against how seriously they're treating it because they stop drinking to talk about it and they eat fruit instead, which is a nice little metaphor about like how seriously they consider the problem, which is that they're going to stop drinking to the point of drunkenness and actually have some nourishment to see how they want to get through this situation. But they didn't bring up any cinnamon spice at this point. But yeah, the thing that pairs it off against all of that is just Bullock off on the path to fucking Cheyenne, where he runs into Charlie Utter.
I'll be honest. Excuse me. I thought that juxtaposed against everything else that was happening in this episode, the Bullock stuff was ridiculous.
Okay.
Like he's so intensely over the top angry. And I know he's trying to find someone who killed Bill and all this kind of stuff, but it's like it
you
really
mean after
is,
he gets attacked, he's angry, or just like as he's riding off, he's angry?
Yeah, just in general, like there's something about that stuff that was like juxtaposed against an actual like problem of society. It just kind of felt. I don't know what the word. It felt kind of childish. I don't mean like the writing was bad or anything, but like from Bullock's perspective, that stuff felt a little bit kind of childish to me, I guess.
I think that's the point, actually, is that
I wouldn't be surprised if it is.
Yeah, things only start to come together once someone as stubborn as Seth Bullock gets out of the way a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I sort of get the Bullock stuff. I'm not sure it's 100%. Necessary, but I think the importance of that stuff really just comes from the fact that he is separated and he's no longer there, and maybe it's enough just because he has his little interaction with Charlie Utter about it, and Charlie starts sort of linking the Bill being killed to this Indian being killed, and like the rage comes out at that point and stuff like that, and they do the right thing. So I think thematically it sort of ties into like Bullock is coming to his senses after this attack, and he buries the Indian the way that I'm not entirely sure what was going on with the Indian. Was he burying another guy, or what was going on?
So whatever their funerary rites are, which apparently seems to be putting the body, like lifting it up to the spirits or something.
Yeah, putting it on top of the hill. Yeah.
Yeah. He had done that to the guy who had his head cut off.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I didn't, at the end when they put him up there, I was like, oh, they didn't really do a good job of getting him on there. But then they like kind of moved the camera. It's hard to see, but the headless body is next to him.
Oh,
so
gotcha.
Basically he was like sitting Shiva with his dead friend or something when Bullock came through. And so they put him up there with him. With the,
Okay. Yeah, and that because that makes Charlie Utter's conversation a little bit more sense, because he starts ranting about like he's out there with his friend, and I always thought he was just talking about Bullock or Hickok and sort of getting confused about what he was angry about.
Yeah,
that makes more sense. Yeah,
it's funny too. Like, it's interesting that they're where Charlie and Seth kind of have their difference in that moment is that Charlie wants to get going. Seth wants to dig this guy a grave. And then it doesn't become a question of, no, we're not going to do that. Charlie goes into like knowing what the funerary rites are.
Yeah.
For the Sioux or whoever it's supposed to be. I can't remember.
It'd be the Lakota, I think.
Lakota?
Yeah.
And so then it becomes like, well, if we're going to do it, we should do it right and not do it how you think it should be done. So it's an interesting shift.
We should dig a grave.
I'd as soon not waste the fucking time.
It won't take long.
You ain't doing him no favor. I mean, his way to heaven's above ground and looking west.
Well, let's do that then.
Don't you want to take him over the ridge, this fucking holy ground, and put him up there with his headless buddy? I mean, that's what you nearly got killed for. Interfering with his big fucking medicine, burying his fucking buddy over the fucking ridge.
Yeah, it's because I would agree. I think it takes a decent amount of time. I'm also just on a purely technical level. I'm not entirely like that Indian missed a layup during that fight.
Oh, definitely.
Scene.
Yeah, no, he spiked the ball at the 1 yard line big time.
He allows Bullock to grab his legs twice. It's not even like the first time he gets him by surprise and trips him. He knocks him off the first time, and then Bullock just does the same thing, and the guy just lets him do it again and run him into a tree.
Yeah, he had that one. That was an L that he had coming, I think.
Yeah, because Charlie does a little bit of explaining about like the markings on the horse represent the guy's like basically like notches on his bedpost of how many white men he's killed.
Yeah,
and I guess they get special points if they club them, and that's what he was doing. So when he rode up to Bullock, instead of shooting him with the arrow, he rode by on horse and hit him with his rifle butt or something, and knocks him down, and that's why he has to taunt him a little bit, I guess, at that point. But
yeah, I think that guy was from the Seahawks tribe.
That's
a Patriots joke for all you Bostonians.
It wouldn't surprise me. But I think that's the only native we see for the rest of the series. I think it's just this
really.
One. Yeah, I think it's just this one little.
That's interesting.
Sequence.
Man, those horses looked awesome. Like when he was like it was just the paint and stuff was really cool.
His painted horse. Would the
especially when he was explaining what everything meant, I was like, oh, that's pretty rad.
Yeah. You go back and the horse looked a little embarrassed actually to be painted up, I think, but he kept calling him a pony too. I don't know what the technical distinction is between a pony and a horse. Would a horse die from being shot with an arrow like that?
I mean, if it got shot in the side and then its rider passed out for 8 hours, probably.
Maybe. The horse goes down pretty quick, it seems. The Bullock is no spring chicken either, but he's at least trying to fight back a little bit. I was surprised. I thought that the horse went down pretty quick, but I guess it doesn't really matter. Back in town, Alma's detoxing. Trixie's with her. The Mets girl is learning how to speak English by singing "Row, row, row your boat" over and over again. Alma tricks EB into thinking that she is back on the dope by acting lusty in front of him, and EB is a little bit distracted. He has some funny line about like she was like puffing out her chest, doing all sorts of manner of things or whatever. And then I guess that's pretty much it. They build the sick tent. Oh, the Reverend has his seizure, I guess, is the other big thing that happens in this one. Any thoughts on the Reverend in his seizing? And Al's response to it, too, which is the other key part of it.
Yeah, that's another little bit of character work for him, where you find out that he had a sister who was epileptic. Brother. Yeah. That he knows how to handle it, and which it's another thing that it's a little piece, but it goes a long way to humanize him, you know?
Yeah. He gives him a nice little, when the doc is checking out Reverend Smith, Al comes in and says, give this malingerer a can of peaches and tell him to fuck off, and then winks at him. It's probably the nicest moment that he's had with anybody in general. He has a bond with Smith, is the point of what they're trying to say through his relationship to knowing that his brother had the same thing, suffered from seizures, and they like, you know, it speaks to the town hall effect is that they even invited him to it in the first place, because he he does represent that kind of pillar of the community thing, but he's not someone that you would think of immediately to solve the smallpox problem.
Yeah, he's
doesn't even have much to say in the scene.
I was a little bit surprised that he did get invited because it doesn't seem like something Al would go out of his way to include.
No, just thematics, I guess, right? Like the church is going to be part of some sort of, or faith or whatever, however you want to view it, is going to be part of this development that they're doing. And they're like, what do you think? Like, is this an extremely religious show? Or what's its take on religion?
I think its take on religion is that whether or not you believe it, it is acknowledging that it is culturally important.
Yeah.
Because I think that's Al's angle with it, is like, you know, he probably thinks it's bullshit, but he realizes that he's preparing in a way differently than Cy Tolliver's preparing, right? Like he's really impressed by Cy's ability to think towards the future. Like
good point.
Business sense,
but yeah, like buying the actual property and stuff like that, and Al's having a different tack on it. Yeah, yeah.
And what Al is thinking 2 moves ahead on is what the place is going to look like from like a societal civilization angle.
Yeah,
because those are he's counting on the people to be there to pay him money to do what he does, and so if I think it's just showing that he's aware of what makes up a functioning town, because like who else does he bring in? He brings in the newspaper guy.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and like, I think it's the end of the news. I love the newspaper sequence, by the way. That was hilarious. I think the end of that sequence or the tag at the end, once the paper comes out, I also really enjoy Al pointing out what his contributions to the article were. It's just really funny.
It's Milch doesn't seem to have a very high opinion of journalism if you take this show.
Not.
Yeah, because it's like the guy basically gets dictated what the story is by other outside parties, and the newspaper man is just kind of a drunk for the rest of it, just like getting back into drinking and also being. I think another big theme about Merrick is that like Merrick's interesting. If it is intentional, you know, Merrick is a highly educated character who doesn't swear like the other characters do. His language is different. And he's also incredibly naive about everything that goes on. Like he's educated, but he doesn't seem to know how the world works. And Al dictating the newspaper story to him is like a perfect example of that. And you wonder how much Milch actually views like the journalism in general under this kind of light, or if he's just making an example of this guy.
2 cases of the smallpox have been diagnosed in our camp by Dr. Amos Cochran.
Hey, Doc.
Get the Amos out of there.
Scratch Amos. At Dr. Cochran's suggestion, a pest tent, endowed by the generous retailers of our fine community, is being erected for the afflicted on the south end, and riders dispatched to secure vaccine.
Maybe you should add there, they're already probably on their way back.
The Pioneer has been assured of their imminent return. That's catchier. Thanks also to the aforementioned merchants, the vaccine will be distributed gratis.
Free gratis.
Free gratis is a redundancy.
Does that mean repeats itself?
Then leave gratis out.
What luck for me, Al, that you have such a keen editorial sense. Free. Distributed free. Period.
But the thing that I think stands out from the tag of that whole sequence is when Al is talking to Dan about the free gratis thing.
Yeah.
Where Al recognizes that you need to speak to people. You need to speak to the people of the town in a language that they understand.
Yeah.
And what they understand is more base than the business of Cy Tolliver or the school learning of Merrick, you know.
What's that line he says? He says
I can't remember exactly what the line is, but
I know
it's
what you mean.
good.
Pioneer is assured of their imminent return.
I'll believe it when I see it.
Imminent return is one of my contributions to the fucking article, the idea for that phrase. Pest tent being erected at the south. What about that fucking Tolliver buying up property on the QT, huh?
Looked like he was struggling with his shit when he made the offer to loan out the lot.
Now, nonetheless, it says the man sees the fucking possibilities of things. I mean, to come up at this fucking juncture with the idea of creating an emporium for the fucking chinks takes brass fucking balls and a long-term vision for the future. Merrick wanted to put here gratis. Now, is the idea to inform your reader or make him feel like a fucking dunce, huh? I had to put free.
I don't see why the fuck he doesn't have news of the baseball. That new league started the team in Chicago.
Different path taken and certain forks in the road. Who knows what kind of joint we'd be in now, huh? Of course, truth is, as a base of operations, you cannot beat a fucking saloon.
Yeah, to tie it in, it's another knock on Merrick. It's like, are you supposed to impress your reader or inform them? Is kind of the general gist of what the complaint is about that free gratis thing.
And it comes off as Al looking like a dimwit at first, because he says something will be offered gratis, and he says free gratis, and then Merrick is like, well, that's redundant.
You're right.
And then Al goes, well, then just put free.
Right.
It makes Al seem like a dimwit until he explains himself at the end of the episode, where it's like, oh, okay. I mean, sure, he's not the most educated person there is, but it's not like he's just picking that because it's the only word that he knows.
Yeah. And I think that there's a, I think the show fairly consistently makes the distinction between educated and intelligent, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And like the educated characters, I guess, would be considered like the New Yorkers and Merrick to this point, like the Garretts and Merrick. And they generally aren't really portrayed as very intelligent. They might know a lot, and Merrick's vocabulary is fairly impressive, but they end up not really understanding what the situation is that's going around. And Brom gets easily conned into a con that ends up with him getting killed, and Merrick just can't figure out how to communicate simple information to a group of prospectors in the Midwest.
Yeah. I think Al is becoming a very. I'm curious to see how things are going to shake out for Tolliver, because I almost feel like Tolliver's purpose is to allow Al to become a more well-rounded, complicated character.
Yeah.
But I mean, maybe they do the same thing to him as it goes on, because he's not quite as interesting as Al. He doesn't have quite as many facets as Al does.
No, he's fairly single-minded and stuff. And also like the just based on like the staff of the Bella Union versus the Gem workers seem in general happier than the Bella Union folks do. You know, Joni and Eddie Sawyer aren't particularly happy. There's there's one of the whores at the Bella Union is very concerned about the kid who gets smallpox, like who was supposed to go off to Montana or Nebraska, wherever he was supposed to go.
Yeah.
And like the Gem is much more of a family, where the Bella Union feels like a business with an incredibly hostile boss at the top of it, and no one feels comfortable in it. I don't know if you think there's anything else going on with them, but the distinction between the two is funny, because the Gem is always portrayed as like the dirtier, grubbier version of it, and that like you would want to aspire to be at the Bella Union, but the Bella Union seems much more negative than the Gem does, and less family-like.
Right. Yeah, definitely. It's I think it's a totally purposeful contrast to have the Gem, which looks like the more shit-kicking place. Actually, I mean, I don't want to say it's the better place to work, because I don't think either one of them
every
is
day
great.
with a smile.
Yeah. But yeah, it's like if you, I think another comparison you could use with the way that Al treats the redhead there's a similar kind of sequence with Cy with another whore who is also a redhead, where he kind of basically says he treats her a lot less compassionately than Al does.
Yes. Yeah. She's the one who was crying about the kid with smallpox, I think, right? Yeah.
What do you think's going on with Joni? I can't really track exactly what her thing is.
What do you think of that actress's performance?
I like her. I think she's pretty good. But I'm not. I guess the thing I'm not getting from her is I'm not totally sure what is supposed to be going on with her. Like, I thought the crap scene was a little bit difficult to track.
Yeah.
Probably because I don't understand how craps works. And like it's all Joni basically they're trying to run a game on what's his name? Ellsworth. Not Ellis from Die Hard. No. He would be good. He would be good in Deadwood.
He shows up in season 3, I'm sure.
Al, Bubby. But, they're trying to run a game on Ellsworth, and she kind of backs him off of it. And it's not like they don't go out of their way on the show to explain to you the game that they're running. They're just showing you that Cy is mad because she's not doing it right.
Yeah. The show's pretty, it's kind of, I don't know how to describe it. The show is fairly subtle with things. We've talked about this before. It always takes me a little bit of extra brain spinning to realize that they're playing with loaded dice in the crap scenes, and that
it's such a quick shot at the beginning. When Ricky Jay comes over and he's already got a pair of dice in his hands. Yeah, it's like a very quick shot.
They hammer it home a little bit more, but it's still subtle where they don't mention it. But he's practicing playing with 2 sets of dice later on in the episode.
Did I tell you about? One of my friends sent me a video of a professional card cheat. It was one of those like Variety or Esquire videos or something where it's like a professional singer looks at the singing scenes from these movies.
Right.
And it was a professional card cheat looking at the different movies that have like card cheating scenes in them, like The Rounders or Ocean's 11 or something like that.
Yeah.
This guy was unbelievable. Like, he was going through all these different ways that you could switch out dice and stuff, or like cut cards a specific way, or deal from the bottom of the deck.
Yeah.
And it's like not in a million years would you know that he was doing it. It was really impressive to watch.
Yeah, there's some YouTube channel that has a guy who does sort of like card shenanigans. Maybe it's the same one, but he does things like dealing from the bottom of the deck. And when people get good at that stuff, you just don't notice it unless you're looking for it. It's really pretty impressive sleight of hand type stuff. For the Ellsworth scene, I mean, Joni is getting at least a little twinge of conscience. Like, I think that, that scene is supposed to show that she's the one that actually feels bad for people like Ellsworth who are being brought into this crooked game where they're just going to, it's not good enough that the house always wins. It's that Tolliver wants the house to win even faster in these situations.
Mm-hmm.
And so she feels bad about that. And I think that Eddie Sawyer is kind of similar in that way too, which is that they're both being driven by Cy to do these things. And I think that mostly what I take Joni's point to be is that in that scene where she's in her bedroom with talking to Tolliver, he talks to her about like why doesn't she embrace this new start that they've got, where they used to, it sounds like they were on the Mississippi or something doing like a boat tour.
Riverboat
gambling. That'll be the prequel series to Deadwood.
Yeah. How come they've never done a show about a riverboat gambling thing? Maybe there was one in the 70s that was like Love Boat-esque or something, but a hard TV MA series about riverboat gambling. That's what I want to see next.
It's hard not to bring like Huck Finn comparisons in, I think. Yeah, you'll start running into uncomfortable territory, I guess.
Too many N-words for modern television, I think, if they're trying to be historically accurate.
Let's get more cocksuckers in this show. I think that'll work.
That's what I've been saying, Brandon.
What the fuck's wrong with you?
I don't know.
Well, you better figure it the fuck out, Joni. Because this free ride shit's coming to a quick fucking halt.
Free ride?
What would you call it?
I earned my way.
How? Posing in expensive dresses and breaking up the catfights? Taking trouble to steer the trade? That don't pay the freight, honey. You're here to create a fucking atmosphere. Fucking atmosphere you create lately. I'm sad. Then on your bad days, oh, I'm so sad. What is it, sweetheart?
Guess it's coming here.
What's wrong with coming here? You never liked the river that much. What's wrong with a fresh start?
How it feels when there isn't one.
Oh, shit. Stay here, I'll bring you back a fucking lollipop.
Sorry, I cracked on your play with the prospector.
Me and Eddie turned it into a longer campaign. He don't get plague, it'll all have a happy end. My worry's you. And my concerns and feelings of fucking affection.
Shut up, Cy.
Work on believing it, Joni.
And Joni is just, I think Joni's just tired of, she never gets a fresh start and is tired of this era. And I think we talked about it last episode. I'm still unclear about what the relationship is between the two of them, because Cy has a line where he's like, my affections for you, and then he touches her face.
Yeah, I assumed that was just like pimp talk, you know?
Okay. He doesn't mean like romantic affection. He just means like my care for you.
Yeah, yeah. You know, the kind of thing where it's like,
baby.
After you smack him around and then it's like, I love you, like that kind of bullshit. That's just really gaslighting and fucks him up.
Yeah.
But it's,
works,
I think
works exactly.
Oh, yeah. Clay, I got 3 kids out of that.
I can't deal from the bottom of the stack, but I can smack home.
Oh boy. Yeah, I think she's an interesting counterpoint to Trixie, because like Trixie on the surface is the more indentured servant of the two. Yeah. Who seems to be in the worst situation. And I mean, I think it's arguable that she is, but and the way they present Joni is it almost seems like Joni graduated out of being a whore on the floor, if you will, and is more of like a booth
My
babe.
favorite bass drum rhythm is the whore on the floor.
They used it all the time in the Motown stuff in the 60s. But it's almost like she graduated to being like a booth babe, where she's just there to bring people in, and she's
glad hands them, and makes them.
Yeah, she's not, because I was actually in the scene with Ellsworth at the bar. I was trying to figure out, is she available? Like, is she?
Oh, could he get her services? You mean?
Yeah. Because I thought that's sort of what was going on. Because I really love the exchange between them when he's talking about. He's like, what does he say? He says, "I have a
working gold mine,
a working gold claim."
Yeah,
and then she says something, and he's like, "I would have said, fuck it. I would have thrown." He says, "I would have thrown a fucking in there if I was in different company." And she said, "I would catch that fucking." And then he says, "A working fucking gold claim." And then he says, "I appreciate you giving me, allowing me the breath of my full expression."
Yeah,
or something
the full range of my expression.
Yes, which is really funny. But like, I don't know. I'm not. I get the sense that she's sort of like the girl at the door.
Yes,
she's
worked herself up from the bottom.
Yeah,
is my understanding.
Yeah,
as well.
And to contrast with Trixie, I think she is almost more. She seems like more of a captive and more depressed about her situation than Trixie is.
Yes,
which is interesting, because I mean, I guess it's all everybody's point of view is different, I guess. But.
Yeah, I think the show is fairly consistent in that it's a state of mind rather than a state of situation.
Sure,
is what drives people. So it's like the better situation would clearly be the one who doesn't have to suck dick all day and can just glad hand people and, wear pretty dresses and hang out at the craps table. And Trixie's in a worse position, but Trixie has a better situation in that Al seems to be relatively a better person than Tolliver is, and Joni feels much more pathetically trapped than Trixie does.
Mm-hmm.
Like Trixie feels like she has a little bit more free range, even though there's not much of a difference there, but she's, through her mission to dope up Alma, she's breaking even further away from Al because she's getting out of the gem, literally, where it was at the previous episode when Joni went off to the funeral, and Cy was like, Cy was talking about that whole thing about like, did she ask permission and stuff to go out, where Trixie doesn't really need that in the same way.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they do a really nice job of using these sort of doubles that they've set up in the show.
Yeah. A lot of
contrasting
doubles.
them. Yeah, a lot of them. Yeah. And contrasting them in really interesting ways without putting too fine a point on things, you know?
No.
Like this.
Yeah.
Thankfully, there's no point where Cy goes over to the gem and he's like, Al, you and I were a lot alike. They never do that bullshit or anything.
Yeah. Just Spider-Man pointing at himself memes just endlessly. No, because they could.
It's not webs he's shooting at.
they could frozen ropes. They could do a lot worse in that way of like I anytime that I think the show is too subtle, I always kind of feel that I'm just not picking up what it's putting down effectively.
Mm-hmm.
There might be a couple scenes where I feel a little bit different about that. Like I'm still not 100% sure what the Andy Kramed relationship is with everybody else. Like,
right.
It seems like he's a real close person, but we didn't really have any interaction that explained that and stuff like that. But most of it is just, it's there. It's just the characters don't talk about it very obviously. They'll talk about it in kind of roundabout ways and sort of touch on the edges of things, but they'll never, as you're saying, Cy Tolliver and Al will never have just like a winking scene where they're just like looking at each other, knowing exactly what the other one is doing or something like that.
Yeah, I appreciate that they are a lot of times giving you exposition that is not television writing exposition. It's two people in the world talking to each other as they would in the real world.
Yeah.
And so they're not counting on you to be up to speed, but they're also not leaving stuff up. They're not leaving stuff out that would prevent you from getting up to speed. It's just like you have to think about it a little bit more.
Yeah. The show does really bury its exposition in the dialogue. Characters just don't and maybe it's because most of the other shows that we watch and do podcasts about, like, but Star Trek in particular, is like Star Trek will not let you miss the point of what the character is saying. Like they will look at the camera and say, we have to go back down there because there's a child left behind or something. But Deadwood, the way that the characters talk, the exposition is like just kind of laced into their general ranting about something else that's going on around it. It's not that no one will ever directly comment on, this is the information you need to process this. I think it was a long time ago, but like the introduction of Brahm is a good example. Like Swearengen doesn't come down and say, he's not literally explaining what's going on. It's just like through their conversation, you kind of pick up on what this con is, and it slowly builds over time. And it's just nice. It's mostly because we're used to Star Trek and being very blunt about it and stuff like that. But Deadwood hides things a little more realistically.
Yeah, I was thinking about Star Trek when we were talking about the craps scam thing.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that it's the difference between the way they do it in this and then the way they would do a scene like that in Star Trek, where they all talk about the technobabble involved and how the scam is going to be run.
Yes.
So you know when it doesn't work, instead of just doing the thing, letting you figure it out, and then relying on Powers Booth to be a good enough actor to get across the fact that he's mad that she's fucking something up.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know if we'll ever, even in modern Star Trek, I'm not sure we're going to get to that point.
Man, Powers Booth would have been a great admiral on Star Trek.
He'd be a great admiral, I think. He's got some good lines in this one. One of Amy's personal favorites in this one is Al talking to Farnham, who's muttering to himself. He says, "Don't play that shit where you drag out the word, maybe drag the words out of you. Declare or shut the fuck up." And he walks off. It's good.
Woman lives in your fucking hotel, but you can't find pretext for pressing the offer on her claim.
I can't outflank Trixie, Al. The whore guards that widow like a mother hen.
She's dosed her with opium, priming her for your approach.
Be that as it may.
E.B., put that offer in your pocket. You knock on the widow's door.
Trixie'll answer.
Trixie answers. You tell her I want to talk to her. Trixie leaves. You gain entry, broach the sale. Can you circumnavigate the child, or must I map that for you, too?
Oh, talk about it.
What?
Nothing.
Oh, come on then, Doc. Him and me are finished. Anyway, don't play that shit where you make me drag your words out of you. Declare or shut the fuck up.
I said something strange is going on in that hotel room.
I think a really great example of the writing is it's very early. It's when Merrick is drinking at the bar and Dan Doherty is the bartender there. Mm-hmm. And he says something about, Merrick's like, "I don't know why I ever gave up drinking. I'm enjoying drinking so much right now." And Doherty says something about, like, he says, like, it takes the edge off the rough ones, something like that.
Yeah.
And Merrick just responds like, "You are always full of pithy quotes," or something like that. And then Doherty just goes, "Thanks." And it's just this, I always find that contrast in their dialogue funny, which is that characters will just say really sort of like interesting, profound things, and then it's immediately just like crushed under the reality of their not really knowing anything at all at the same time.
Yeah.
It happens all the time. I enjoy it.
Yeah, it's a very well written show.
Anything else for this one? I think that's it. We also learned that Asians are the degenerate gamblers amongst all the races, according to Cy Tolliver, which is another thing. They call them Celestials all the time, and it's always confusing to me because I never make that association.
That's a weird.
I don't know where that reference comes from. I don't know how it.
Is it because they're all 800 feet high and are the secret creators of humanity on Earth?
Is that a reference I'm not getting?
Sorry, that's what the Celestials are in the Marvel universe.
It might be.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe the Celestials in Marvel Comics started out as just a bunch of giant Chinese guys. I don't know. I'm not sure when they were created. If it was in the 60s, is a solid possibility that's what it was.
We got to modernize these guys. This is just not working. This is 1972, people. Yeah, I guess that's it. Anything else to say about this one? Or are we done?
It's weird to know that Brahm's body's just hanging out by the river.
Yeah, he's being iced.
Still.
Yeah. You don't see it either. It's just characters talking about it. Yeah.
I feel like he's probably getting eaten by wolves or something.
Yeah. I mean, who would go? I guess it would be the natives up on top of the hill are also maybe attracting all the wildlife that people are eating or the animals are eating. But yeah, you think Braun would be done by now?
I think that's part of. I want to say that I saw or read this somewhere. I could also be completely making this up, so I'm just gonna pull a Chakotay here and say. I think that part of the idea is putting the body up like that is that the animals will eat it, like the
I would think so.
Hawks and vultures or stuff will eat it, and that's giving it back to the land or whatever.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. They say they point towards the west, which would be where the sun is setting, which kind of my interpretation of what that thematically means makes sense.
Yeah. Really banking on having some crossover listeners for this episode from the Star Trek podcast with some of the references I've made.
Does anyone know who Chakotay is? I don't think so. Yeah, I guess that's pretty much it for this one. This one was called Plague. I thought there was some... Oh, I guess just my final thing. I think I brought it up and you answered it, but I guess my opinion about religion on the show. Milch is Jewish. He's quoting from, I don't know when Corinthians is, if that's like Old Testament or New Testament or whatever. It must be New Testament. It sounds like a Jesus-y kind of thing to say. And my thing about it is that like the show is not, the show dabbles in religion quite a bit. My take on it always is that Milch deals less, at least in Deadwood, Milch deals less with the sense of like there is a higher power, and he treats it more as religion has, like a lot of ancient wisdoms, it has like found something true to the spirit of humanity within it. And so he doesn't take the sort of literal or like fundamentalist approach that there is like a deity that's sort of guiding everything. But because, people like Marcus Aurelius in his Meditations say basically the same thing that the Corinthians reading has, which is that how can you be cruel to others when we're all working together and like no one asks for any of this? And like it's to be mad at your neighbors the same as being mad at your foot and stuff like that. And so I think
that's why you throw the whole body to the lions.
Correct. You can't have a little bit just laying around. It would be like, was there a Nightmare on Elm? What am I thinking of? The possessed hand. Have you guys covered a movie?
Evil Dead?
Maybe Evil Dead. That would make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's basically, and just, so it takes the sort of ancient wisdom of old religion and inserts it on top of the show without feeling as though the Reverend Smith character is like unbearable or disconnected from reality in the sense that he is only appealing to God in a lot of, like, it's tough to describe, but Smith comes across more as a believable, grounded character who just has these deeply held personal beliefs than he is a sort of like traveling fundamentalist preacher, which is important to the show.
Yeah.
I take it I suffered some sort of convulsion or seizure, perhaps brought on by irregular hours.
Oh, I see, and I expect you'll soon be hanging up your shingle in competition with me.
No. Oh, no, sir.
How did you feel before the spell come on you?
I noticed a peculiar smell in the air, as if something were burning.
Is it first time?
No, the first episode occurred several days ago, after the service for Mr. Hickok.
And any others between that one and this?
No.
Follow my finger.
Or perhaps I just need glasses.
Merrick needs to see you about the article. Prescribe this malingerer a can of peaches and show him the fucking door.
Yeah, his characterization continues to be really unique, in that it's both, I think, purposefully over the top and ridiculous.
Yeah,
and
he's crazy. Crazy a little bit, as we've talked about, Joe.
Yeah, but also extremely earnest.
Yes,
and it works together really well for some reason.
Yeah, I feel like the characters are starting to get past his earnestness too. Like it was uncomfortable at the beginning, but I feel that people now sort of are more used to the Reverend and how he talks and things like that.
Like I think it would be really easy to make him a much more cynical character,
Yes.
Cynically characterized character, where you play him as clearly he's a bullshit artist or something, or people, they give him...
just the plague is counteracting. The plague could easily have been played as a counteraction to what he is preaching about the sort of like higher calling that's coming to this town, which is that like, the plague is biblical in and of itself, but you could see it being more contradictory to Smith than what it is. But Smith is played more as he's dealing with this in the same way that everyone has to deal with their struggles and stuff like that. And they could very easily play the plague off to the Reverend as the Reverend going off about the plague being God's plan. Yeah, representative of something. Yeah.
Yeah, but what they choose to do is he rejoices in the fact that God has put him there to help.
Right.
And that's a very interesting distinction to make, and it makes him a much more complex character, I think.
Yeah, a little bit more, if not nuanced, a little bit more just like aligned with something that the show would say. Yeah, I like Deadwood just, in comparison to its other TV shows of the time, which are generally much more cynical about humanity. Like Wire's not cynical about humanity. The Wire's cynical about like sort of the institutions and stuff that we create. But Sopranos is very cynical about people. Deadwood is like startlingly optimistic in a lot of ways. And I think that that's what I like about it. We've talked about it at the beginning of the podcast and everything, but I think it balances that. As I get older, the positivity is like more important than the cynicism in a lot of ways, and not like ignorant or like happiness or anything like that, but just like
not dumb shit.
No, not that dumb shit. Like just open a can of peaches, basically, is my whole thing, and just go at them. It's like, how'd you describe it? Deadwood sees that in all the tragedy, there is still rebirth constantly, which I think The Wire touches on too. But it's like there is always this sort of like moving forward momentum and overcoming challenges and not just buckling to the challenges. And that's like that's important to the human spirit, is what the show seems to believe.
Yeah, kind of going back on what I talked about a little bit in the last episode is I think it's the difference between how this treats sort of the end of the West versus the way most other things treat the end of the West, which is usually from the point of view of the cowboy character, and like the end of the West just means the end of him.
Yeah, a lifestyle is eradicated basically, or like a way of being.
Yeah, and it's supposed to be like bittersweet or something. And in this, I think they really draw an interesting contrast, because Bullock is that character, right? Bullock is the one who, even though he is set up to be this lawman or whatever, he's very much the cowboy type character.
Yeah.
And I mean, in this episode, he's off on a blood vendetta to get revenge.
Yeah.
Like he's Josie Wales or something. And everybody else who's still in the town is thinking like years ahead. Like everybody else everyone who's at that meeting, except maybe Farnham, knows that things are always going to keep moving.
Right.
And always going to be progressing. And I think Bullock is the one who's in danger of being left behind.
Yeah. He's overcome by a deadly sin, wrath, right?
Yeah.
So it's even more of a sort of the analogy there, which is that he is blinded to the potential of things. Although he seems to realize, he does develop in this episode, I guess, after he gets picked up by Charlie and buries the native and everything like that. Things feel like it's going to be different for Bullock after this episode, potentially. At least he's going home.
Are they going home, or are they going? They're going after McCall, right?
Oh, they're going after McCall. That's right.
Yeah.
Charlie's coming back from Cheyenne, but I guess they're going to go to wherever McCall went, however they're going to track him down. Odds. Do you think it was last question before we go? Both Bullock and Charlie are traveling by themselves. Does that seem appropriate in this area or this history of stuff? I would expect people to be going in groups of like 20 people everywhere they go.
Charlie is coming back from Cheyenne with 2 horses.
Yep, loaded with shit, though. Loaded with
gear, and he's like, Al sent out 3 guys to kill a family for stuff. Know.
Yep. You got to be secure. Charlie's just the most badass motherfucker on the show.
Guess.
He's just killing everybody.
That's
on his way. Yep.
Yeah, maybe he's got like sewn into the back of his second horse, my other horse is a gun or something. I don't know.
And I actually don't know the reality of...
Keep honking, I'm reloading. Just sewn into the branded on the ass of his second horse.
He's got the Pulp Fiction badass motherfucker wallet just sashayed into his saddlebag. I actually don't know. I wonder about how Native American tribes moved around, whether or not they actually operated. The sense from like movies and stuff and pop culture is that Indians or natives tended to always sort of be by themselves for whatever reason, but that can't be the case. I wouldn't think. They must have been traveling in groups.
I would assume so. Yeah, I can't Chakotay my way out of that one. But.
No. Well, let's all think about Robert Beltran's ass and just move on to the next episode. This is Plague. It was the 6th episode of Deadwood. Thanks, everybody, for listening. If you enjoyed the content, patreon.com/The Penske Files is the best way to support the show. Even if you're listening to this 2 years in the future, you can reward us posthumously by going there and dropping a couple little nuggets of gold.
Posthumously?
Yeah. I'm Merrick. My name is A.W. Merrick. That's it.
Is this show going to end in like a murder-suicide?
What was the word I was looking for? Post.
I guess technically that would.
Well, the show will be dead, right?
Yeah,
the show will be over, and people could still be listening into it.
Yeah, I guess that works in a morbid kind of way.
We'll be all right. We won't be like that horse going down with one arrow. We'll be surviving. That's it. Clay, do you have anything you want to say?
Check out Rotten Horror Picture Show, horror movie podcast with myself and co-host Amanda. On Patreon, we're doing Video Nasties this year. January was Dario Argento's Tenebrae. February is Possession, starring Sam Neill and Isabella Gianni, which is a pretty intense movie. And we got Badass Podcast where we talk about Batman the Animated Series. We got all sorts of fun stuff, so check it out.
That's it. We're going to be back with the next episode as we move into the second half of the first season of Deadwood. It's called Bullock Returns to the Camp. So we'll see.
What's that one about?
We'll see what happens in that episode. It's mysterious. Thanks everybody for listening. We'll see you later.